Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you're located in the world. My name is Sarah Burke. I am the chair of the Chemical and Process Industries Division for ASQ. I just want to thank you all for being here today. This is the sixth and last video or webinar in our Fall Technical Conference webinar series of the year in honor of FTC, which couldn't take place this year due to the pandemic. So thank you so much for being here. Before we get started and kicking things off with today's talk, I'll just do a quick introduction. So throughout today's webinar, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A box, and I'll be keeping an eye on that for our speaker today. And a little background on the Fall Technical Conference, if you're not familiar with it, although I'm sure many of you are, especially if you've been in this one of our videos the last couple weeks. This is an annual conference sponsored by the American Society for Quality and the American Statistical Association. And the conference goal is to engage researchers and practitioners in a dialogue that will lead to more effective use of statistics to improve quality and foster innovation. This is one of my favorite conferences to go to each year, and I see many people signed in today with some of my good friends and colleagues that I get to see at the conference. So hopefully next year we'll be able to see each other again in person. Speaking of which, it is still on the schedule back in Park City, Utah, with the dates here. So hopefully we'll be able to do that in person. And it's not too early to submit an abstract if you want to present. So abstract deadline is not until March 31st, but if you've got a good topic, feel free to send it in early. I'm sure the program committee would be happy to see that. Alrighty, so if you've missed any of the other talks in our series, all of the videos and slides are available on the FTC website, which is listed at the bottom, and you can go watch them to your heart's content. And today's talk will also be posted at the end of today. All right, now on to our speaker. I want to make sure we give her plenty of time. So each year, the Quality and Productivity section of the ASA honors an individual with the Gerald Hahn Q&P Achievement Award. This award recognizes an individual who has demonstrated outstanding and sustained achievement in leadership in developing, promoting, and successfully improving the quality and productivity of products and organizational performance using statistical concepts and methods over a period of 20 or more years. And I am pleased to announce on behalf of Q&P that this year's winner was Martha Gardner, who works at GE Aviation. Typically, the Hahn Award winner presents the plenary talk for the Q&P, I believe it's the lunch or morning session at FTC. Since we couldn't do that this year, we're so happy we have the opportunity to do it here with you virtually. Martha Gardner is the Executive Quality Leader at GE Aviation. She received her PhD in statistics from North Carolina State University, and she's a fellow of the American Statistical Association. Keeping the bio short so we can have more time with Martha today. And with that, Martha, please take it over. And thank you so much for being here. And congratulations.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much. All right, let me try this sharing screen. Let's see. I want to share that. And then put it in full screen mode. Okay, how are we doing?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, well, I'm very excited to be here today, the last one in the sequence of the Fall Technical Conference webinars, and certainly very excited to be among such a distinguished group of award winners. I know I've really enjoyed the talks, some of which I have had to go back and look at afterwards, but it's been really good, learning a lot, and excited to be the last one here today. Okay, so let me start out with a little bit about Jerry Hahn, because I know Jerry very well because he is the one who hired me originally into GE back in 1998. And it's funny because when I did get the job offer from Jerry, I was like so excited, but then I was like, how long are you going to still be here? And he was like, no, I'm planning to retire in 2001. And he had it all planned out, and that's what he did. And that was after 46 years at General Electric and the last 28 of those years had been as the manager of the Applied Statistics group. Over the course of his lengthy career, he authored multiple books, one of which I had actually used as a reference when I was in graduate school, over 100 papers. And as Sarah mentioned, I mean, you know, this award is named after him. I mean, he organized the quality and productivity section back in the 80s and was the first chair of the section. Many awards from both ASA and ASQ. And I have to tell you, when I went to GE on my interview, I mean, first of all, I was very nervous because I had met Jerry at the joint statistical meetings when I was interviewing. He had attended my talk. And then when I got invited to interview, I was so excited. But then I got there and I was nervous. The first thing they have you do is wait in the front lobby of research for your host to come and meet you. And they have a big case in the lobby there at GE Research that has medals, like really high-level medals that researchers have won. So for example, there's 2 Nobel Prizes in that medal case. And I'm reading through the medals, and then I see there's Jerry's Schuhart medal and there's Jerry's Deming medal, right? And so then I was just even more nervous for the interview. But definitely one of the most exciting days of my life was when I got the phone call after that interview offering me a job to join GE Research. So I got to work with Jerry for about 3 years and then continue to see him at Applied Statistics alumni sort of events. So there's a picture here from a dinner from a few years ago. I've got Jerry circled. I'm sort of in the back. And then I also recommend, there's a fun interview with Jerry that was in Amstat News a couple of years ago. And I put the link here so you can go back and take a look at that. But certainly lots of quality applications here, lots of practical applications, which of course very important for applied statistics. But Jerry was the type of person that anywhere that I would go within GE, I would usually run into someone who had worked with him, you know, or Jerry would make an introduction and say, you know, he would say, get contacted about an issue and then tell the person, okay, well, I'm sending Martha or I'm sending, you know, whoever else from the group. And right there, that would just give you entry into having an initial level of credibility. And I certainly think that's important for our profession is really raising that credibility so that then it applies to like the other people that we work with and give them those entry points as well. And Jerry was certainly very good about that. So I'm going to be talking about growing a technical career in statistics. I'll be honest, I've been really shocked that it actually has been over 20 years at this point because it seems like it just flew by so fast. I thought I would start with why I like being a statistician. And I was looking through some of the attendees on here today, and certainly have learned from many of you and have enjoyed interacting with you at meetings and stuff like this. But certainly what I like is the flexibility in the application areas. Now, I personally have chosen to work in industrial statistics. Of course, that's what many of you have chosen too, whether it's more through like ASA, ASQ sorts of things, but I like the industrial side of things, specifically I've mainly focused on physical and engineering science sort of aspects, but have worked with other statisticians in GE that say have focused more on financial applications as well. So that's a really cool thing about statistics is the flexibility in the application areas. And because of that, we get to collaborate with experts in other fields. And I'll be talking just a little bit more about collaboration later. But honestly, if you want to really learn a lot more about collaboration, I highly recommend Christine Anderson Cook's talk from earlier in November as part of this series as well. I know I found that very informative and took a lot of notes myself because I'm always looking to improve. I certainly enjoy having the strong network with other statisticians. And a lot of that really started in my graduate programs. I had done my master's at the University of Alabama and had worked very closely with Bill Woodall, who was a professor there. And that professional relationship just continued over the years, even as, you know, he left Alabama, went to Virginia Tech. I went to North Carolina State for my PhD, but, you know, we certainly still in contact with each other around technical questions. And then you get to have fun solving problems. So I'll talk about the importance of a statistician really being seen as a problem solver as we get into some of the later slides here. But for me, that's really one of the best parts of being a statistician is having fun solving those problems. And then the last thing is people are always curious about what you do. I know for many years, I sort of had trouble explaining to my mother exactly what I did. And then at one point I had worked on a problem with our former silicones business, and as part of that had been on the team that had updated the part of the formulation that makes a shampoo be a 2-in-1 shampoo. And I was able to tell my mother, okay, go to the grocery store and go to the shampoo aisle, and where there's, say, this certain shampoo and there's a little blue flag on it that says new formula, I helped make that be a new formula. So that's really cool. And now I work for GE Aviation, which is on a lot of planes that many of you fly on. Of course, maybe not right now because of the pandemic, but hopefully very soon. So really looking forward to that improving. But that's what I've always seen is people are always curious about what you do when you're a statistician. They're like, wait, now what is that? And because of all the flexibility in the application areas, we usually have a lot that we can talk about. Okay, so let's get into the meat of growing a technical career in statistics, because that is certainly something that has always been very important to me. Is I always knew I wanted to stay on the technical side of things versus going up, say, a management career path. The technical path has always been very important to me. And I certainly did that for 20 years at GE Research. And then I came to Aviation a couple of years ago. And now I'm the chief engineer for our quality organization. So still very much technical focus, still do a lot of hands-on statistics sorts of things as well. But what I've got here is I've always thought about when you're growing a career, it's almost like climbing up a mountain. So if we start with sort of that foundation, which is where you're first learning. Once you've gotten out of school and you're going into say your first position, there's a lot of learning. But honestly, even 20 years in your career, when you say change positions, there's still even more learning. It's almost, you're not completely starting over, but there are things that you still have to grow. And when I look at that that's all about your technical depth. And that's building credibility, being execution focused, also being an energetic team member. And I'll talk a little bit more about each of these sub areas as we go through. And then as we start moving up and you're going from the learning into more of the doing, it's where a lot of the collaboration and communication skills really need to be developed. I'll look at things here like enabling solutions. So not just doing the analysis, but enabling solutions, really having that customer savvy and developing your network within whatever your organization is. And then honestly, there are some people that really stay in that do part of the career for their whole career, and that's fine. You can certainly have a very, very rewarding and satisfying career doing that. Some people continue to move up this path into more of like a guide, into like also guiding and leading types of roles. And this is where we get into things like creative mindset, although that's also necessary for the doing aspect as well. Really being a systems thinker and a problem solver, a change accelerator. But then as you get more into the guiding aspect, it's really about empowering others, whether it's creating learning opportunities, maybe mentorship or sponsorship, but also helping your organization activate vision around what should your organization really be doing. And then I look that there's a common thread throughout this whole thing, which is really always having that continuous learning aspect. And I tell you, for me, like the last 10 years, as we've started having more online opportunities, and of course, it's because of the nature of what I do, it lends itself very well towards online learning. But I have had just a great time taking classes in areas that are related to statistics. So whether it's building up my modeling skills, building up some of my programming skills, looking at things like, say, machine learning, artificial intelligence. I've created programs around helping other people do that as well. But that's been very important to me, is always wanting to stay on top of, hey, what are the new things that are happening in the statistical field? And certainly that's one reason I'm very excited that we still had these Fall Technical Conference webinars. So even though it wasn't the same as having the Fall Technical Conference, and where we all got to see each other and see many more papers and see all those rich contributions from our colleagues, but we got to see some of the highlights still and didn't have to wait another year, because there's also a timing aspect to that, to staying on top of the newest things. Okay, so let's talk about, we'll start out with talking about technical depth. And as we go through these, I'll also share some stories from my career, things that I've found to be important. With the building credibility, definitely, I think that this is one of the most important things that people do, whether it's early in your career or early in a new position, is making sure that you ask questions. So to clarify what the problems are, and then be very clear about your hypothesis in the approach. So you want to make sure that people see you as that technical expert is very important. And then also making suggestions for improvement. Because sometimes what happens is when you're new into a role, new into an organization, because you don't have that history, then sometimes you can ask those questions that make people think about things differently. And that's certainly something that I've always found to be an advantage of being a statistician, is being able to do that on many different things. But certainly this is something that helps you learn and helps you then be more part of getting to solutions in whatever it is you're working on. The second thing is being execution focused. I always tell people that are early in their careers, although it continues to apply, is you need to deliver what you say you will and by when you say you will. And if something happens where that's not going to happen according to your plan, you need to be very proactive in speaking up if your planned delivery is going to be impacted. And these things happen. I mean, especially I was in a research environment for 20 years, and we would always think about, okay, how's our research progressing through what we call technology readiness levels. Some of you may be familiar with that. And I would tell people, okay, listen, you're not going to be able to commit to when something, if you're in TRL 1, when's it going to get to TRL 9? If you can just give me an estimate what you think it will take to get to TRL 3, let's start with that. Okay, so that we can say, okay, we don't need to get all the way up the mountain to start. We need to get part way up the mountain. Do you think of it like getting to base camp? Now, what's it going to take to get to base camp? And then let's put together a program plan around that. Now, who is going to be doing what to move up to that? And then expect that people will say, hey, if I have a problem getting to a certain point, that they'll bring it up sooner rather than later, so we can understand, okay, what are those risks, what are the challenges or the constraints, and then come together as a team to help deliver that. But if you don't ask for help, people aren't going to know just to volunteer to help with it. And then the last thing is really being an energetic team member. So, I mean, this is all about, say, being curious and things like that, but really learning about your organization, where you fit in, what is needed from you. But at the end of the day, what I always would tell new folks that were coming into research is your main goal early in your career is to be recognized as a go-to person for something, whatever it is. So for me, because the businesses that I worked with early in my career, I became a go-to person for experimental design. And that was for not just a business I was supporting at the time, but also with other research programs as well. So you want to be known for something and be recognized as that technical expert for something specific. So be that go-to person, because that's what's going to help you really then grow that network that we're going to talk about in a little bit and get more opportunities over the course of your career, is starting with building that solid foundation. Okay, now, if we talk about collaboration and communication, now I already mentioned, I definitely recommend the earlier Fall Technical Conference webinar from Christine Anderson Cook on this topic. So I'll just bring up a few additional points here that I found useful over the course of my career. One thing is to really enable solutions. So a lot of times as a statistician, we focus very much on the analysis, and obviously we have to do that, right? So we have to think about what's the appropriate analysis, the data that we need to be able to do that analysis, all of that kind of stuff. But then we also need to figure out how to get that into solution form. One of the things that I've been really excited about the last few years is the focus on what's called statistical engineering. So if you're not already a member of ICO, which is the International Statistical Engineering Association, there's a free website for that. There's a website and anyone can join for free. I've been very excited to see that because it gets you focused more on not just the statistical analysis, the tactical piece of this. That's like one step in many, with the final step being to deliver a solution. So several years ago, I was working on a project for one of our businesses that was all around predictive modeling, and then basically helping them understand, okay, who had done what experiments in different part of the businesses, and then how can we use predictive models to say, okay, this is what will happen if we say use this material and this material together, all this kind of stuff. So we had a really good idea about how that whole algorithm needed to be structured. And we had taught people how to build these sort of models, mainly mixture models and things like this. We had all of this like pulled together, but now what does that actually look like in terms of being able to use it? And it was going to take a little time before we got some of the resources. We said, okay, we're going to need some more like programming resources and things like that. And I tell you, at that point, it had been a few years since I was in graduate school and had really done some extensive programming work. But that's what I had to do for a short time there until we got in the resources that we needed to really make something that was more usable, let's say. I mean, our initial system, it worked, but wasn't going to be like a long-term sort of thing. But by doing that, then we're able to go show that to people and get more support, and then actually get the right level of resource that we need to then deliver on that system for our product developers. So a lot of times we have to like reach out and build other skills to help enable solutions. And then certainly on the customer savvy aspect, we have to recognize that our customers can be internal, but also external. So we have our business customers or maybe it's university, or government, whatever organization we're in, we have those internal customers, and then external. So whatever we deliver, whoever we deliver, what we make to, or what our service is, all of that. And it's really about actively listening to understand, their problems and needs. And this is where I think what we call in GE going to Gemba becomes really important. And this actually even ties back on the technical credibility aspect as well too, is really going out to where the work is done and seeing what that looks like and understanding and asking questions. And it goes with customers too. In this case, where you're going to Gemba is, okay, who's going to be using what it is that I do, whether that's internal or external. And then having that discussion, listening to what their problems are, listening to what their needs are, and making suggestions. So I've had things over my career where I got contacted by, say, someone in marketing in a business unit, and they're like, oh, I have this idea of something that we could do. And then they say, okay, well, let's talk about it more. And then we end up in going out to visit customers and things like that. And as we're doing that, then I can be like, hey, have you thought about looking at it this way? Hey, have you thought about trying this or trying this? And then we really get that sort of brainstorming going, and oftentimes come up with things that neither of us had thought about individually, but then putting our heads together, with our customers, coming up with things that can really help them. And then I've mentioned this already, the importance of developing a network. And I think that it's important to develop this network both internally and externally as well. And so what I mean by that is certainly growing the network within your own organization. And you do that by helping people, okay, solve problems and building that up, but then also growing that external network as well. So for me, I have always really treasured my membership in the American Statistical Association, and then specifically within the quality and productivity section. I've also been involved in the physical and engineering sciences section and the education section as well, and just really treasured those different perspectives. And then what happens is a lot of times I'll have some issue that'll come up and it's something I haven't really dealt with before. And then I have a bunch of people that I could potentially reach out to and just say, hey, I need to solve this type of problem, because of course I work for a company and can't really talk about specifics, but I can say I have this type of problem, and then say, okay, what's a good reference? And people are always great about pointing me to references, some of the newest papers. It may not be in journals that I normally would read. So there might be something, say, in a biopharm journal or something that's in an econometrics journal or something like that, but that then I can take and use on what I'm doing. So you want to really develop those relationships internally and externally, because they can really help you as you go forward and really help you deliver solutions for your customers as well. Okay, now the creative mindset. And this is something that I have really been working on, I would say, like the back half of my career so far. Because in the beginning of my career, people would give me problems, and then I would say, okay, I would assume they're coming to me, I'm a statistician, so there must be a statistical problem there. What I've learned is that's not always the case. That sometimes there's multiple things that probably need to be done before they're actually ready for the statistician to get involved. So certainly one of the things that I've really focused on is trying to be a systems thinker. So really thinking about, okay, what's the right problem to be solved? I mean, obviously there's many problems that can be solved, but what's the right one to be solved? And then really taking those steps to take what's like a specific problem, but then thinking about that specific problem in terms of what's the general problem. Then how have other people solved that general problem, and then turn that into a statistical problem. So just a simple example, and this happened some years ago when my son was in middle school. He had come to me and said, Mom, I'm having trouble with this math problem. And I looked at it, and it was a quadratic equation. And I was like, oh, well, just use the quadratic formula. And then he looks at me like I've sprouted 3 heads and was like, Mom, we haven't learned that yet. I said, oh, well, let me see the book. So he gives me his book, and I look, and then I'm like, oh yeah, before you get to the quadratic formula, you learn about factoring first. So then I helped him, with his problem, whatever, that was all fine. But then it was a few days later, he came home from school and he was like, you won't believe what she wrote on the board today. So it was a quadratic formula, because that's what's happened. I mean, we get presented with something like, say, a quadratic equation that we need to solve. And we know, okay, let's turn that into the general problem, which is the quadratic formula, and to a general quadratic equation, with the A, B, C's, whatever. And then there's a quadratic formula, and we plug in, we get the answer. Versus we start with a quadratic equation and say, just do random shots to try to figure out what will work, right? In other words, the brute force versus using the quadratic equation, which is the more elegant formula. Okay, so taking that step back and thinking about what's the broader problem here is very important for systems thinking. And so then that also ties into being a problem solver. It's really about having an approach for how you solve problems and then applying that consistently. So for me, the way that that I always have thought about it, really, it's sort of three prongs. And it's interesting because about a year ago, we have a huge emphasis on problem solving within GE. And about a year ago, I was asked, Martha, we're having this workshop coming up. We'd like you to talk about how you solve problems, and can you put down like what's in your head on a piece of paper? I said, okay. So I did, and I realized it's actually sort of complex. But basically, when I'm presented with any sort of problem, I mean, first, I do ask the questions like what we would typically think of, define and measure in DMAIC is, so, okay, what is the problem I need to solve? What is it that we need to measure? How well can we measure it? Those sort of things. But then after that, I really look at, okay, what do I really need to do next? So do I need to, did I have something that was working and now it's not? So do I need to return something to its original state? Okay, or do I have something that's working, but now like the target has changed, like I need to improve it for some reason? Or do I need to do something that I've never done before? Do I need to create a new state? So I look at it, do I need to return something to its original state? Do I need to improve the state? Or do I need to create a new state? And that's how I generally approach things. And that's whether it's at work or at home. So recently we had to apply this to an issue with our washing machine. It was taking a long time to run the cycle. And then at some point it got to where it just didn't want to drain. So then I start going through like a 5 why analysis, right? So why is it not draining? And of course, then I find the missing pot holder that has gotten stuck, in the drain line, and that doesn't quite fix it. And then I find a sponge that's stuck down even farther. So things that had sort of been missing, but I just hadn't thought about it too much. So, but this is the sort of thing I think through is, okay, do I know what the root cause is? If I do, then is there an apparent solution? If there's not apparent solutions, then I may need to move over and do something that's, say, more rigorous, like a DMAIC, going through a full DMAIC process. Certainly some of the lean tools. Oftentimes I get pulled into like help with parts and part delivery. And one of the first things I think about is, okay, well, what are all the steps that we have to go through to make a part? And now what are the first time yields on those steps? Because I'm trying to figure out, do I have a flow problem or do I have a capability problem? And that'll take me down different tool sets. And then certainly in creating new problems, I mean, for me, I've done a lot with design for Six Sigma methods. Certainly a lot around like analytics and predictive modeling there, really trying to predict what the variability and capability are going to be, early in the process, understand what might be some of the roadblocks to actually implementing new technologies and things like that. So problem solving becomes very important, I think, for a statistician. And then the last aspect here about having a creative mindset is really also being a change accelerator. So we use something called a change acceleration process in GE. I mean, many companies use this as well. We've had it a long time. But basically what it's a function of is recognizing that any sort of solution that you're going to come up with, there's the technical aspect of the solution, but then, and how good that is. But then there's also the cultural acceptance of the solution as well. And for your change to be successful, both of those need to be successful. In fact, it's a multiplicative relationship. So you can have a great technical solution, but if no one accepts it, then it doesn't go anywhere. And that's when a technology can end up back on a shelf. So I think that it's very important to think about, especially if you're creating new things. Who's going to have to change what they do? So the salesperson, are they going to have to change what they're selling and how they're selling? The person who, say, works in finance and how things are billing, the person who works in service. So the person who works in manufacturing, all of those things, especially when you have a new technology, all of those ecosystems around it have changes that have to be made too. So do you understand those? And I certainly have had, my share of experiences. I can remember there was one project, honestly, I'd worked on it like a year and a half. It was a great technical solution. I got invited to a sales meeting for the business, and had a huge revelation that, okay, this is actually not going to work because it could impact these aspects of how these people do their job. And we had just not considered that before. So the quality of the technical solution, but also the cultural acceptance, and those multiplied together is very important. And then the last step here is around empowering others. So certainly as I've progressed in my career, I mean, I've had many opportunities to help train and coach others in statistical methods, but also innovation methods, analytics, many different things. And so as part of that, I've had the opportunity to create many learning opportunities for other people. And I think it's important for us as statisticians to share our skills with others while recognizing that people do learn in different ways. So that's certainly been a huge learning just for me. Is some people are more, say, visual learners. Okay, so they can read and absorb, like they can read the book and absorb. Some people are auditory or more auditory learners, so they need to hear something. And then some people are very tactile learners as well. So they like the hands-on sort of aspect. I know for me, I really like the hands-on aspect as well. But so what I've always had to try to do is then address how different people learn. And certainly with adult learners, it's different than say children or teenagers, but really creating learning opportunities that take into account like the different learning styles of people and pulling that together. So that's one way that we can really empower others. And if I look over the course of my career, whether it's been developing black belts and master black belts that have gone into all sorts of different organizations and levels, or it's the analytics engineer program, which many people across GE have done just to really get that, what I call the upskilling. I just think it's so valuable when you can put those skills in the hands of people that have, whether they're mechanical engineers or maybe chemical engineers, biologists, whatever, but have those skills as well. It just makes the solutions even more powerful. So the other way that we can empower others is mentor and sponsor. Certainly for, say, people that are new in the statistical field, this is very important. So, okay, how do you work with others in your organization? Understanding that structure, all of that sort of thing is very important. So it's helping others develop and reach their career goals. It can be formal, or maybe it's informal. As I've gone through my career, I've certainly, mentored statisticians, but also mentor people who are in other technical backgrounds. So, have different experiences, different technologies that they're experts in, things like that, and really help them focus on, okay, what are your goals, and asking questions. So it gets to the point where it's not so much advice, but being there to listen and then ask questions to help them think through, okay, what are the different aspects of what they want to do. But I've really enjoyed this part of my career over the last several years as well. And then the last part here around activating a vision. And what I mean by this is, at the point, and this is where you get, if you remember what I had on the earlier page with the mountain, so like learn, do, guide, and lead. This is really getting to the lead aspect. So where you're contributing to the development of your organization's vision and then really being seen as a champion for it. So within our quality organization, Aviation, we have a proactive quality framework that we really want everyone to be mobilized behind, and then really being seen as a champion for that is very important. And certainly that's all of our leadership within our organization is responsible for that. But you should be seen as a role model for that as well. And in some cases, it can be at like different levels within the organization where this is happening. It may be, say, within a project team. It could be, say, within your statistics organization, or like the broader organization in which the statistics organization fits as well. So all different levels it's possible to do this. But all of this together is three of the things that I think are important in terms of empowering others. And then just some other suggestions that I have for a successful career in statistics. So I'll just take the last couple minutes and we should have time for questions here. First of all, is to be open to new opportunities. So like I mentioned, I was at GE Research for over 20 years. And when I got contacted about this opportunity with an aviation, at first I was like, yeah, I'm not sure. But then I realized, I'm at a different stage of my life now. My son is grown, all this kind of stuff. I actually could, make a move. And even though I had contacts here in aviation because I had led the probabilistic design research program for a few years, most of my contacts were in engineering. But this opportunity and the job that I'm in now is in supply chain or manufacturing. So it's really given me a whole new opportunity to learn new things, new ways of applying my skills that I've developed over the course of a career. And it's been a lot of fun, but you have to be open to that. And certainly stay in touch with your network. That's actually how I heard about that opportunity, is because I was in touch with a network, and when this opportunity came up, then they're like, oh, wait, have you thought about Martha? So that's the thing. You want people to think about you when such things happen. So staying in touch with the network is good. And then certainly for me, I have like that handful of people that I'll still like go to and reach out when I run into something I've never quite seen before. And so whether it's people inside the company or, some of my friends who say are professors and things like that, I always have people I can reach out to with questions. Now, I've also, over the years, had to learn, when to say yes and when to say no. Because what happens is, it's very easy to say yes to a lot of things, but then you have to remember that execution piece that I talked about earlier. So it's very easy to say yes. And all of those things you're saying yes to could be very exciting and rewarding. But then are you going to deliver like you need to deliver? So just something to consider when you're being asked to do many things. And then one of the things that I always apply to this also is, okay, is this going to help my business move forward in some way, shape, or form? Or is it going to help me with my personal development and my personal growth and what my goals are? So also consider both of those aspects as well. I've mentioned this already, continuing to upskill. So I've taken many classes. Like I mentioned, mine have been online over the last 10 years. Certainly GE has great educational opportunities within the company as well, but I like to do things inside and outside the company. The upskilling, very important. And then the last thing is take your vacation. So everyone needs that time to refresh their brain and reinvigorate their mind and soul. So I know early in my career, I was not always the best about taking my vacation and would sometimes lose it as well. And so now all that has changed, within GE now, but definitely make sure you take that time to recharge. And I know right now it's a challenge, with COVID-19 and all of this. So for many of us, especially if you're working from home, it seems like the personal aspect and the work aspect have sort of melded together somewhat. But I'm still waiting for the day when I can actually go take a nice trip and get that downtime. It's important for us to stay fresh as statisticians. So with that, that's basically what I wanted to cover today. It's been a lot of fun. I certainly tell people that have mathematical bent, don't forget to look into statistics. I think like for even high schoolers, AP statistics curriculum has been very important for our profession as well. And certainly looking forward to seeing even more people continue in this profession and growing technical careers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret. That was a really good talk. We'll open up the floor for questions and comments. Feel free to use the Q&A box or the chat box. while we wait for people to send things in, I actually have a question, Martha. So I'm kind of early-ish on in my career. So do you have any recommendations for additional resources like books or things like that to continue growing as I'm kind of growing my own career?
Oh, well, I mean, it depends on what sort of things that you're interested in. I mean, for me, I've really enjoyed like some of the later books that say Jerry, also that Roger Hurl and Ron Snee have put out around like the statistical engineering aspects and those sorts of things, because they talk about, you know, really thinking in your problems, understanding like the broader context and stuff like that. So I think their books have been really good. I've personally been have done a lot over the last couple of years, like around, say, growing some of my, like, say, Python skills, you know, for programming and stuff like that. And there's some good online courses as well.
Great, thanks.
But if you have like a specific topic, then we should chat.
Absolutely. All right, looks like Willis Jensen has his hand up, so we're going to test the allow to talk feature.
Okay.
Willis, you should have the ability to enable your microphone.
Is he there?
Perhaps we're working on technical difficulties, but if anybody else has any comments or questions, feel free to use the chat box. Any other things for our speaker today? All right, well, if not, I want to thank you so much, Martha, for your presentation today. I got a lot out of it myself and appreciate the time, and congratulations on the Hahn Award.
Oh, thanks.
I want to oh, go please, yes.
No, I got my plaque, so thank you very much.
Oh, that's fantastic. So glad you're able to share that with us. And I want to thank all of our attendees for being here today. And again, if you missed any of the previous webinars, they're on the website, and this one will be up hopefully by the end of the day. And again, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a good holiday season, and everybody stay safe, and we'll look forward to the new year. And hopefully we'll see you at FTC in 2021. Thank you, everybody.